Miguel Iturrate back here with the Cage Rage podcast, and we are in the aftermath of UFC Fight Night 146. The fights are all in the books, and we've got a quick results and recap here with our MMA team, Devin Miller and myself, Miguel Iturrate. Devin, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Just a little late, and I just sat through this whole fight card. It was pretty good with Wichita. Wichita got a pretty good show. It wasn't bad.
Yep, I would give it good grades. Not huge on storylines, but let's go ahead and cover the fights that we covered previously. Heavyweights were big on the card, and we had the return of Ben Rothwell. Rothwell taking on Blagoy Ivanov. This one went the distance. Kind of an ugly fight. I expected that because I think both guys are kind of, tend towards that type of fight. But the judges maybe got this one wrong. A lot of people feel that way. How did you see this one?
I had it 2-1 for Rothwell. I had the last 2 rounds for Rothwell, but it was a close fight. The third round was definitely in Rothwell's corner, but I do know that Ivanov looked a little bit better than what I remembered him against Dos Santos, and he was moving better, and they both have such great chins. The one thing that confuses me is that he's this high level sambo practitioner, and in neither fight I've seen him even try to get the fight to the mat, which he just seems to really be very content standing there and slugging it out, and he just doesn't really transition very well from striking to takedowns. But it was vintage Rothwell. He really hasn't changed any bit. He's been off for 2.5 years, but it was the same Rothwell that I remembered.
Yeah, and basically, if you have a knock on him, it is that he has a tendency to take punishment in order to give it, and that has a tendency to sometimes let rounds slip by or fight closer rounds than you should. He did manage to come forward most of the time, and he did manage to bust up Blagoy, but I just saw it for Blagoy. We had called it for Ben earlier in the week, and you can take that with a grain of salt. The rest of the card we did well on. Moving up the card, we had Tim Means and Nico Price in the welterweight division, and this one started out rough for Nico. How'd you see this one?
Yeah, I thought Tim Means was looking sharp, and during the fight, I was like, man, I might have got this one wrong because Nico looked like a smaller man in there too. Tim Means has always been a very big welterweight, but he looked very sharp in there. But Nico, I knew he was very tough. I knew that he had a lot of power, and Tim Means has a history of walking into shots, and he walked into a big one tonight, and it put him out. And that was definitely the knockout of the night, and probably the best highlight to come from this card. So, I mean, that was impressive. It's a big win for Nico Price. I think he's now 3-2 in the UFC, and he looked really good. He got a very unconventional knockout in his last fight where he was actually on his back and ended up hammer fisting the guy. I think he was going for a heel hook on the guy and started hammer fisting him and actually knocked him out from his back in his last fight. And now he just got this big knockout win over Tim Means. So he's got a couple highlights on his resume in his last 2 fights. So that's definitely good couple fights for Nico Price at this point.
Yep, I don't want to correct you on anything, but Nico's coming off a loss to Abdul Al-Hassan, where he went down in about 40 seconds. The knockout you're talking about is the one prior to that. And I think I like what I saw about Nico because he took a little bit of punishment this one. In the last fight, he went out kind of quick, and that's why it's kind of a forgettable fight, and he took a step back. Here, he was getting hit. He was getting rocked, but he kept fighting, and he stayed in there, and that's kind of what you want to see. Maybe we could see more head movement out of him, down the line as well. That would suit him. But, we've seen the knockouts before, and he's got a lot of power, and this time he had a little bit of staying power. Means, as you pointed out, came out hot and looked good. And, I said in the earlier picks, when we did the picks, that Price looked more physical than Means, and, Means proved to everybody that, that goes out the window when you start a fight. So I think he did a good job, and we'll see him back. He's a veteran. But Price, coming off a good win, moves to 13-2. Co-feature.
Yeah.
This one was exciting because in the co-feature, we're back in the welterweight division. You had Curtis Melender taking on Eliseo Zaleski. Zaleski dos Santos is the Brazilian, they use the two last names. So Zaleski getting the job done quick. A lot of people thought Melender was here to win it. It was a pick'em fight at some point, and then Melender came in a slight favorite when it closed, and Zaleski got it to the ground and got the job done. How'd you see this?
Well, I titled my video that I did recapping this that Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos might be the best fighter that you've never heard of. He's now on a 7-fight win streak, and just 10 years ago in the UFC, if somebody was on a 7-fight win streak, they were fighting for a title. And the talent depth of the sport now is so deep that you got a guy like this that's very talented. He's not a boring fighter, and I'm hoping after this he can start getting some respect, and I fear that maybe he still won't, because I think a lot of people are just going to kind of see Curtis Melender as a bust, because it was so obvious as soon as Zaleski got him to the mat that he was on just completely different level on the mat, and the takedown was with ease, but Zaleski deserves some respect. He came into this fight ranked number 14 in an already just insanely stacked division. I mean, when you really look down the line of Usman, Woodley, Covington, Thompson, Robbie, Ponzinibbio, Leon Edwards. I mean, it's Damian Maia, Gunnar Nelson. I mean, it's a really, really good division right now. And Darren Till, I forgot about him. Jorge Masvidal. I mean, the list just goes on. That top 15 I mean, other than maybe lightweight and featherweight's right there too, but it's definitely one of the hottest divisions in the sport. And I think that he's definitely thrown himself into that potential contendership. I'd like to see him fight a top 10 contender next. I think he's earned it with seven fights in a row that he's won. So it was an impressive fight, and I think he's very good. I'm very high on him.
He did. I think he looked calm in the ring. I think that's important. He was in the co-feature spot, so you can see that they want to give him some love. He needs more love. I agree with you. He does need a more feature spot and give him a chance, because the bottom line is if this was a step up, he passed with flying colors, 2 minutes, 35 seconds, and he's done with the fight. So you have to give him an A for the performance. Melender, sort of back to the drawing board there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this was a very hard loss for Melender, because he wasn't even in the fight. I mean, he never was even in the fight. So,
yeah.
and I think he was actually ranked after his first UFC win for a brief time, but that division's fluctuating so much different talent coming in and out, that he wasn't ranked going into this fight. But he was just completely outmatched, and I can only speculate on who Dos Santos could fight next, but I would even consider maybe even RDA, who's ranked top 5, top 6, or potentially maybe even the Till Masvidal loser, or maybe even the Pettis Wonder Boy winner. I would.
A Gunnar Nelson match would be interesting. Gunner's, I think, up in the next couple of weeks as well. But if he has another win, that would be an interesting matchup as well. So a lot of good stuff going on in the welterweight division. Heavyweight division, we had the main event. Junior Dos Santos is not ready to give up his contendership spot, obviously. He came out looking refreshed, looking bouncy, and kind of looking confident, because he knew he outclassed Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis came in with the typical heart, came in a little bit better shape. He's putting the work in, but he's still a little bit behind the learning curve on some things, as you pointed out in the pre-fight video. A lot of fundamentals missing there. Did you see that today? At the end of the day, Dos Santos got the job done pretty early.
Yeah, I guess I could start with the good with Derrick Lewis. That he did look like he was in better physical shape, and he was definitely seeming to be willing to be more, just willing to kind of throw different techniques, even though there's very little technique behind him. He seemed like he felt good going into this fight, but Junior Dos Santos, I mean, I encourage anybody that's got a fight past the counter, any sort of way to look up fights, to go watch his second fight with Stipe, the last time he fought for the belt. And before that, I know there was the Alistair Overeem fight that he lost to, and he didn't look the same. And you know, a lot of people were speculating that he was coming, that he was on the way out, that he was starting to go downhill, or there's other people that speculated about that USADA coming in had affected him. But I'm starting to, just in hindsight, looking at how good he's looked lately and how refreshed he looked tonight. And, he looked like vintage Junior Dos Santos, is that he might not have really spent enough time just recovering from the beatings he took from Cain Velasquez. And those were brutal fights. I mean, he survived the whole 5 rounds, the second fight, and then in the trilogy fight, he got finished in the 5th. And he just was bludgeoned for 10 rounds of his life by a prime Cain Velasquez that was about as mean of a man as you're ever going to see in the cage. And I mean, those type of fights have to take tolls on you. And you know, just 2 cards in a row now, we've seen Robbie Lawler and Junior Dos Santos, who didn't seem the same after their wars there for a little while, but now they seem like they're almost reinvigorated. I thought Robbie looked great against Askren, and I'm wondering if just some simple recovery time is good for these fighters after they go through some of these just terrible wars.
Yep, and resetting the mind too is important. Now, Dos Santos seemed to call out Francis Ngannou. What do you think of that?
I think that or a Stipe trilogy is what I think should happen next, because I would probably prefer the Stipe trilogy just because the first fight was so great between them. Then Junior actually won that fight, and the second fight was just, it didn't look like Junior. Nobody just runs through Junior like that in 2.5 minutes, and it looked like Junior couldn't even pull the trigger on it. And as soon as he got hit by Stipe, he just crumpled. And I would like to see him get a chance to run that back, but Ngannou might just be a little too scary, because I think Ngannou's chart is only going to just keep going up. I mean, Ngannou took that hard loss to Stipe in his first title fight, but it was very clear he was a baby in the sport. And I think that his team's got to be fixing those holes with him. And I think that he's going to be a hard man to beat. And I think there's a potential that with DC going on the way out, we could end up seeing Ngannou versus a Stipe versus a Junior again for the heavyweight title, with the way that the heavyweight roster is set up right now.
And just to give him a shout out, during the show on social media, Francis Ngannou was out there with his team looking for a jiu-jitsu coach to spend the next year in his home country of Cameroon teaching the sport and trying to help kids there and stuff. So if there's a hint that he's learning jiu-jitsu, he's sending jiu-jitsu practitioners to his home country, so I guess he's felt the power. And I think Ngannou is the most interesting guy in the heavyweight division. At this point, it's no-brainer on my part for Dos Santos to call him out, because, that's the attention-getting fight. And the win over him would probably mean Dos Santos has the title fight next for sure.
I completely agree, and that's really the only division that we see this kind of stuff in, where people go on really bad streaks in their career and still come back. I mean, Alistair Overeem has in double digits amount of losses, and he's still one of the best heavyweights out there. And that's a possibility. Overeem just got to win his last fight. I mean, they might want to run that back with Dos Santos, because that'd be a good way for Dos Santos to be able to avenge a fight that he lost. And I don't know if that'll happen. I think it's more likely what you said. Ngannou is probably the most likely next opponent for Junior, but I could also see them making the Stipe rematch. And either one I'm fine with.
And we are wrapping up the UFC's Wichita, Kansas event from March 9th. I'm joined by Devin Miller to look at the top 4 fights Devin, as you were wrapping up in terms of the heavyweight division, what the heavyweight division really needs is the formal announcement of Daniel Cormier's next fight. The champion is either waiting for Brock Lesnar or waiting for someone, and with that up in the air, everybody else is kind of sitting around pregnant. We had Dos Santos make a statement today, but he's still going to be put in line waiting for Brock Lesnar or for all that stuff to be cleared up. So I think you're 100% right. That's the kind of shenanigans you only get in the heavyweight division. So where are we? We've got a great martial artist who showed his stuff today, and we're still going to wait to see where we see him again. But that's the news from the UFC today. What do you want to close with, Devin?
I think we've covered it all. Just go check out the Cage Rage Podcast YouTube page. We've got a lot of content. We're dropping it daily, and just tune in for further videos.
All righty.